Hi everybody, welcome back to a new build on the channel. This time I'm going to be tackling Meng's AH-64D. This is in an Israeli scheme where it was known as the Saraf. And I thought long and hard about whether to go for the Meng or the Tacom versions of this particular aircraft. And it was in the balance. But what made my mind up was the problems that are apparent with the Tacom decal sheet, which people have said is very difficult to use. This is a cartograph sheet in this kit, in the Meng kit. On the other hand, I know that people have reported difficulties with the canopy fit on the Meng kit, but others haven't, so that doesn't bother me too much. What finally made my mind up was I got this at quite a heavy discount from Jadlam in the UK. So money spoke in the end and I went for the Meng kit. Now in this first episode I'll be building the cockpit, and for that I'm going to be using a Quinta Studios interior 3D decal, which is this. And the only thing that I don't like about 3D sets is the seat belts. I don't really think they look right. So in this particular case I'm going to fit these HGW fabric seat belts for a lot better appearance when they're done. So a couple of aftermarket pieces which brought the cost of the kit back up to its normal retail price, I suppose. So as I said, in this first episode I'll be building the cockpit. I think it covers about 6 pages or 6 sections of the instruction sheet. So I'll make a start by cutting the parts out, numbering the sprues up so I can see them a bit better, which is my normal practice. Get them cleaned up and then we'll see how they go together. So I'd just like to add a little bit of masking tape. Although the sprues are engraved with the sprue letter, I just like to put these pieces of tape on just to make them a bit more obvious. So the first job I want to do is to cut out the main parts, clean them up, dry assemble them and test fit the cockpit assembly into the fuselage. Make sure we can close the fuselage up, so once that's done we know that we can proceed with the priming and painting stages, confident that the parts are going to go together properly. The control console panels here are going to need to be sanded off, ready for the 3D decals. We'll do that in a moment. I just want to clean them up first, get rid of the sprue gates. There's lots going on or coming up on the channel over the next few weeks and months. I've just started a 1/700 scale Flyhawk Ajax for fans of naval modelling, and I'm going to be starting a pair of Tomcats, both Tamiya Tomcats, one of which is a commission build. One for myself, so I'll be doing those as a double build, building them together. And I'm just finishing off over on Patreon a Tamiya Phantom, which has been sticking around on the shelf for several months now, unfinished. And I have to admit that's because I hate doing Phantom stencils. But I cracked on with it last week. Over the 3 days it took to do the stencils, but that's finally done. I've just got the main decals to do on that. So hopefully that'll be a nice addition to the collection fairly soon. And I've got a big scale naval build coming up, which I'll talk about later on in the year, once I've made a bit of progress with the little Ajax that I'm doing. This is one of my favourite jobs in building. just cutting the parts out and getting them ready for assembly. For some reason I just find it really relaxing, and it is one of the key elements, I think, to a good build, because this sort of preparation is important in the long run in a build. It makes sure that the parts are going to go together as well as they're designed. Doesn't rule out every problem if the design's a little bit off, but it's your best guarantee that you're going to get close. Just making sure that all the sprue gates are cleaned off and the parts are as they were designed. The other thing is with this step is that once you get the primer and paint on, you can often see the sprue gates or seam lines, and it does spoil the final finish. So this is a step that's important. It's one of the foundations to building, I think. Now we're going to have to cross-reference with the Quinta Studios 3D decal instruction sheet just to make sure that we get these parts prepared for the 3D decals properly. Some of the detail will need to be removed, but not all of it, so that cross-reference needs to be done. So cross-referencing the Quinta Studios instructions, we can start to remove the moulded on instrument detail. So on this part, on this right hand console, pilot's console, we just need to remove the switch panel at the front. The instrument panels need a little bit more finesse, I suppose, to clear them up. The main display panels, I'm just going to shave off the detail that surrounds the panel, but it's a bit difficult to get in with a file because there's adjacent detail like these switches that we need to preserve. So this is a safer way of getting the parts ready. This is a sharp new chisel blade, so it just gets in and we can just shave that surrounding detail off. That's the pilot's panel strips. That's the hardest one to do because you've got to get in amongst other bits of detail, but just a careful use of a chisel blade, just being careful to avoid the detail that you want to preserve, and that's ready for the Quinta Studios 3D stuff. Okay, so let's just try and clip all this together, or most of it anyway. We don't need to do every last bit. You can see how big the aircraft is in 1/35th scale. Much bigger than I would have expected. Some really nice detail on this fuselage. Meng had done a really good job of that. Okay, let's check the fit out. Oh, that's really nice. Clips together, as you can hear. That's an impressive fit. It's needed no adjustment at all. Goes in perfectly. So that's good. We know that all that's not going to cause us any problems when we come to assemble it. So it's okay now to get on, get these parts primed up, and we'll start doing a bit of painting on them. Okay, all the parts are prepared now, all mounted, ready for painting. So I'll get over to the spray booth, give these a coat of Mr. Surfacer 1500 black, just to get them primed up. Right, so the primer's gone on nicely. Mr. Surfacer dries to a really nice smooth finish. Great base for painting. And I'm going to be using some Tamiya colours. The whole of the cockpit is basically black on these aircraft, but that's a bit of a challenge for building models because it looks just a bit flat and you lose a lot of the detail just painting it black. So what I'm going to do is add a bit of variation using three colours really. The first one is a rubber black and a NATO black. So they're two different shades really of grey essentially, I suppose. And I'll give all the parts a very light dry brush with some German grey, just on the edges of the detail, just to pop it out a little bit. So this is going to be a bit of experimentation until I'm happy with the result. And the difficulty for videoing all that is that it's very difficult to pick up the very subtle shades of black in the lens of the camera. So it'll probably not look an awful lot different, but I can assure you that to the eye close-up there will be a bit of variation. So I'll get on with that and add these colours. I might also try to leave either the Mr. Surfacer or some matte black in the very recesses of the detail as well. So altogether we're probably using at least 4 different shades for this cockpit. So now I'm going to do a bit of dry brushing with some German grey, and this step is one that you need to really control, I think. It's very easy to overdo this and end up with a grey interior, a definite grey interior, rather than a highlighted black one. So very gently does it with the German grey. So I'm hoping that this will pick up this sort of quilting detail. As I said, it's going to be difficult, I think, for the camera to pick it up. It's not the easiest thing for the camera. just got to build the effect up very gradually until it's where you want it to be, and it's just a matter of judging it by eye really. So I'll carry on with the rest of these parts. There's lots to do and it's quite a time consuming process, so I'll come back when all that's done. Now just off camera I've added a little bit to the dry brushing, just with some Tamiya lacquer metallic grey, just in a couple of selected areas round the entrance for the crew, just on these sills here, and down in the footwells where the crew feet would scuff the paint down there, just round the edges as well in one or two areas. And that just helps to pick out the shapes of the various angles on the cockpit, just to define it a little bit more. So the next step is to start to apply some of the decals. Now I'm going to start off with the kit decals. We've got, I think, 3 to fit at this stage. So we've got this really nice decal sheet from Cartograph, and I'll just get the stencils off that we need. These parts have just had a coat of Tamiya lacquer LP9 gloss varnish just on these areas where I'm going to be applying the decals. Okay, now I want to add the first of the Quinta Studios 3D decals, and I'm going to start with the seat. So in the set that I've got, we get the seat belts, which, as I said, I'm not going to be using those, but we do get these nice seat pads which have got a fabric weave effect in them, so they should look a little bit nicer than just painting the seat cushions. Now these decals behave like standard water slide decals, so you put them in water. The only difference is that you can use glue as well, and I use a little bit of canopy glue just to add a little bit of security to them. They do have adhesive just like any other decal, but the canopy glue just adds that little bit of extra security. You can also use CA on them, but I've found that CA can cause them to crack if there's any flex in them. These are kind of a vinyl material to get the 3D effect. I think Quinta Studios also produce their own adhesive for their decals. I've never used it, but I think it's basically a PVA, so the canopy glue is a good equivalent. This is the stuff that I'm using. So I'm just going to let these initial parts dry. There is another pad to fit on the back, but I don't want to apply it just yet until these are set properly. So just put them to one side and in the meantime we'll get on and apply some of the instrument decals. These decals for the screens are a massive time saver. It takes 3 or 4 minutes to put these on, and I would be painting those for probably at least half an hour to get the gloss of the screen. I'm picking out all the switch detail around the edge, so these are much quicker. So I'm happy with that. That's the pilot's panel. So I'm going to carry on and fit the rest of these 3D decals, and then we'll come back. I'll show you what they look like once they're all done. These are the seats finished, apart from the belts, which I'm going to do next. So I've just added those lumbar supports onto both and given the whole seat assembly a coat of Tamiya LP24 semi-gloss varnish. That's just to bring the finish back to the original sort of finish that I got with the painting. So ready for the belts, and as I said earlier on, these are much better, I think, in this sort of scale, the bigger scales, 132, 135th as in this case. You can just about get away with the Quinta ones in smaller scales, I think. In the 48 they don't look too bad, but I think in 32, 35 scale you want something a bit more realistic, and these fit the bill. So in these sets we get a set of belts. Obviously this is a microfiber. These fabric belts have a backing paper that you need to peel off. If you don't do that, they're just a little bit thick and they don't lay properly. So don't forget to do that. And we get a nice blackened set of belt buckles. Saves us having to paint them. And in this case we get a release mechanism in 3D print and some decals which I can't really see what they add. They just look like black bands, but we'll come back to those. Now there are one or two little tips and tricks that I use when I'm doing these fabric seat belts. The first one is to keep the buckle on the fret whilst you're threading them. Now you can't always do that, so for example in this end buckle the fret is connected in such a way that you can't really thread the belt through, but you can with these, which are the main buckles. So you just cut it off at the front, so separate it from the fret at the front there, and if we fold it back a bit, that means we can thread the belts whilst we've got something to hold on to. So it's much easier than trying to hold a tiny buckle and thread at the same time. Now you do have to keep your wits about you when you're doing these, because even though these belts are printed on both sides, one of the sides has more texture than the other, which is the one that you want to see. And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're threading multiple belts through buckles, as we are going to be doing on this one. These are a pair of lap belts that I'm going to be doing now. So you have to pay close attention to the instructions when you're doing this. And make sure that you separate the belt from the backing paper. And once the belt's threaded like that, we can go in carefully. Make sure that you're not going to cut the belt when you cut the fret. And that's the first one done. Now we do have a clip to fit on this end. Now one thing that you can do where you've got this little clip to fit on the end is just bend up the belt just like that, and that just enables you to drop the buckle on. And we can just secure that with a bit of thick CA in this case. You don't want too much, because if you do, or you use a really thin CA, it tends to wick through the fabric and spoil it a bit. So thick is the best compromise, I think. Just fix it down like that. Now the other thing that I try to do is to get the two buckles on a pair of belts in more or less the same position, which just means you've got to adjust the strap a little bit. It doesn't have to be exact, but you don't want one obviously longer than the other. So the top half of the strap, which is this, needs to feed through a spindle, which you've got to make from some wire. This is 0.33mm nickel silver rod. And we've also got to fold the buckle up as well. Just fold the sides up. Once it's folded, you can then just insert the rod. Obviously this is oversized. But we'll trim it off once we get the belt on. So obviously these take an awful lot more work than using, say, a photo etch belt, but as I said, I think the effect is much better if you've got the patience to put these together. It's a good idea to fix the pin as well. You don't want that sliding out when you've got the belt together. So I've got one more of these lap belts to build, 4 shoulder belts and a couple of centre belts for the front of the seat. So I'll get all those done, and once they are, we can fit them to the seats. Okay, so about an hour later, and got all the belts ready to fit onto the seats. These centre, or I suppose the crotch straps really, are really nice because they've got some 3D printed catches in the middle, or securing catches, and just painted those up in a bit of metallic black just to match the buckles, and they're ready to go. Really nice addition. That comes in the HGW set. Now this is a step that always fills me with dread, really, because you can easily ruin all your work on the seats by getting CA everywhere. So we'll just be very careful at this stage. Now the temptation here is to just wrap the belts around the side of the seat, but actually they need to disappear down the side of this cushion, so inside the seat. I'm not going to glue that, just tuck it down the side. Now what I like to do when I'm positioning the belts is just to lift them off the seat a little bit in some areas around here, and that just gives them a more natural feel, as though they've just been left to find their own position, rather than gluing them flat onto the seat. So just fix them down at the back. Now these might have attached to the frame at the back, I'm not sure, I can't get any references for that, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to see right the way down here anyway. Again, just have them slightly loose at the back there. So that's the first one safely finished off. As I said, it's always a bit of a nervous time putting belts onto seats. I'll do the other one and then we'll start to put the various components for the cockpit together. Okay, time for some assembly now, and all I've done with these 3D decals, another slight improvement you can make, is just to give them an overcoat of some satin varnish, and that just brings them to the same sort of finish as the paintwork in the rest of the cockpit. If you don't do that, they can look a bit too glossy and they'd be a bit more obvious that they're added on decals. One thing you do have to do if you're doing that varnish coat is just to mask off the glossy screens, which I've done on these two parts. So that's a worthwhile improvement. As I said, it just blends everything in again. So let's get some more of these parts fitted. Okay, so that's the cockpit done. The only thing left is to fit the clear glazing between the two crew positions. But I don't want to do that yet because I think that might be the cause of some of the fit issues that have been reported for the kit's canopy. So I'm going to fit that permanently when I come to do the canopy assembly, just to make sure everything goes together. But I will pop this into the fuselage halves just to make sure that it's going to go in all right. The only thing that could obstruct it, I think, is these parts here, which are from the Quinta Studios set. And these are mounted on some styrene sheet, so I've scratch built those 4 things. I think there's some sort of transmitter or sensor related to the crew's helmets, which apparently had some pretty advanced vision technology in them, and I think these relate to that, but I'm not sure at all. I'm no expert on the Apache, but I will just check that this is going to go in without those additional parts. They're not part of the Meng kit, just to make sure that they're not going to obstruct. Okay, so that's a nice fit. It's going to go together all right. Closes up. See, the detail's really nice on this fuselage. In fact, the whole kit's really nicely detailed. Beautiful surface detail on it. So we're looking forward to getting that together, hopefully in the next episode. As I said, I'll do these access hatches here and the various equipment behind them. Maybe do a bit of extra detailing in there. So as you know, there's a lot going on the bench at the moment. I'm going to be doing a little bit more on the Lancaster over the next 2 or 3 days, get those wings finished. So I'll leave some photographs for the end of the video, and hopefully you'll join me for the next episode in this build, coming up fairly soon. So in the meantime, look after yourselves everybody, enjoy your modelling, and see you soon. Bye for now.